In Titus 2, older women are commanded to teach what is good so they can help younger women love their husbands and children. On today's show, you'll hear from older women who will share timeless, relevant biblical wisdom and personal, profound life experiences to help answer your questions and teach what God says is good so you can be the wife and mother you were created to be. Welcome to another episode of Older Women Likewise.
Hi, ladies. I am so glad that we're all here, partly because one of you I know and two of you I don't. So before we get started talking about this really important topic of cleaning out our parents' homes, either when they're moving to a facility or once they pass, and lessons that we've learned doing that, I'd like to just get to know each of you a little bit. So, Dana, let's start with you. What has been your experience with this topic of moving parents or cleaning out their homes?
Well, it's been, I feel like I could write a book about it. This afternoon, I was telling the ladies, I sat down with my husband and I said, okay, help me remember. And for my parents' side, we moved them 5 times. And for my husband's side, we moved 4 times. And each time was extremely traumatic. It was not something they wished to do, but it needed to be done. And to do it with some type of decorum, laced with the love, laced with the respect, laced with the timelines that always come with a move. You know, it's nothing you can stretch out. It's been something that I look back on often and think, what could I have done better, easier, faster? What could I tell somebody to help them do this? And recently I've had occasion to use some of those experiences to help people. And I'm deeply grateful for that.
Wow. So we can just sit and listen to you all night long if we needed to. All right. Colleen, how about you? What experience have you had with this topic?
Well, I want to give a disclaimer. I have never served in a fiduciary role, and I am not a financial anything professionally, but I have been an executor of an estate, and I've also been closely involved in closing out three total of 3 estates. So I do have some stories to tell and some insight. I've learned a lot of things. You know, it's like being the mother of the bride. You do it and you learn all this stuff and you're really good at it, and then okay, you're done. You're
Right.
not gonna do that anymore. So that's where I'm coming from. I hope I can offer some insight for people.
Fantastic. How about you, Lauren?
Well, my parents are still with me and are still in their own house. So, Mom, if you're watching this is not me saying that I'm going to move you to a home or something, because that's where she would take that. But my husband's parents both have passed now, and so we cleaned out the house when my husband's mother passed away in 2011, and then his dad moved to an apartment, so we cleaned out the house at that point, and then he passed away a few years after that. So I've had it from the role of being the worker bee, but not the decision maker, because as just the daughter-in-law, I wasn't really making the decisions. But I have been able to kind of watch it from an outside perspective, which is an interesting place to be for sure.
Absolutely. So you bring up something that actually we didn't even touch on in the questions that were sent out for us to consider, but that is the family dynamics that can come up during a move can really, they can just really test the Jesus in you, right? To know how to be kind, how to stay in your lane, how to, keep things moving when people are stuck in grief sometimes. So my situation is that my father passed away in 2022, but my mother was still living. So, the dynamics didn't really change very much. But my mother just passed away in February. And she actually left her house to me, and she had a property in Michigan that she left to my brother. So where we were having some mold issues and we needed to leave. So we were already in the process of like, we've got to get out of where we were. Mom passed, left the house to me. So that was an easy, okay, let's just move in there. But her house, I think she may have been like who Mary Poppins was based on, because her closets were never empty. You would think, okay, everything. You're like, this house is not this big. Where is all this coming from? So in the midst of our grief, we were also moving, which is like one of the top 10 stressors, right? Mm-hmm. And I came with a full house. So trying to decide what things to keep, what things not to keep, it was really overwhelming. And thank the Lord for good sisters who could come alongside me and ask questions like, do you think you'll need to bake 196 muffins all at one time? Oh, why don't we get rid of some of these muffin tins? Mom had 4 ice picks. I was like, good grief, woman. Who uses ice pick?
Even if you have one in each hand.
I was like, this is the start of a 48 Hours episode. Let's get rid of those. Why do we have these? So that has been where we are. We're still like, there were a couple boxes of things that we just said, okay, put it in a box. We can deal with it later. And some things we had to kind of make some very immediate decisions on. So I, at one point, called together some of the older women at our congregation and said, I just need you to meet with me after services and pray over me and speak truth and goodness and beauty into me, because I'm overwhelmed and I'm afraid in my grief, I'm just not thinking clearly. And they were fantastic. So my prayer is that what we're doing tonight will be of help to someone else, that we'll just have, they had good practical things. And that's what I'm hoping that we can give tonight. So let's get started with, let's just start with this one. How do we decide what to save and what to release? Colleen, what do you think about that? How do we decide what to hang on to and what are we going to release?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say, like, you're talking about Depression era pack rat, I think, with your mother's house, maybe?
Yeah.
A little. About? Okay,
well, she had my grandmother's stuff and her stuff. Mm-hmm. We had everybody's.
Yeah. And so you're pulling the stuff out of the closet. So this is speaking to somebody who's got like a lot of stuff, and even not just stuff they've acquired along the way, but stuff that they had from when they were little, the whole 20th century in their house, Mm-hmm. So I say, take your time about getting rid of personal family items like photos, letters, keepsakes, and furniture. You may have siblings that some of them are like, just chuck it. But I would just be really careful about throwing that stuff away. And what I did was at the beginning, I went through, we had my grandparents and my parents were shutterbugs. They all had all kinds of photos. And so I went through, I did a first pass over all the stuff like that, letters and things like that. And I threw away what everybody would agree was just trash. So I threw that away, but I kept the other stuff. And then maybe a year and a half later, I came back around and went through it again. And it was much easier to see what we really need, what we don't need, what we could do. We had some things on unusual media, like reel-to-reel audio. We had 8mm film, and there was my husband's parents' wedding was recorded on a thing. It was a wire. It was just a wire, and he knows some stuff about audio, and he was like, I think this is like a recording on here. So he sent it off. So you've got all these weird things. So don't be careful about throwing that stuff out because it's priceless. one thing we did, we were going to have an auction. So we had the auctioneer come in and we would tell him, okay, what's this worth? What's this worth? And he would just quickly say $50, $2, you know, and that way any of us and the grandchildren, if anybody wanted that chair, then they would just pay what the auctioneer said it was worth, rather than somebody say, oh, I just want it. Okay, well, you can just have it. That's kind of unfair. So that seemed to work out really well, and it kept everyone honest. So those are some of my ideas. I'll pass on to somebody else, see if they have some other things to say.
That's really handy advice. Dana, I'm curious, after all these moves, I mean, I'm thinking you're losing a little bit in each process.
Oh,
right?
yes. Yes.
So
yes.
what did that look like to have multiple moves?
Well, you know, in preparation for this, I was doing some research across what's going on right now with my generation. And there was a statistic that came out that really boggled my mind. The average American home right now contains 300,000 items. 300,000 items. And the writer of this article was saying, you have to make 300,000 decisions on these 300,000 items, and you've just lost your parents. No wonder you're depressed. I thought, that's exactly right. But, and I know my husband and I were talking about this morning, my parents were alive for all of these moves, and they were physically incapable of being part of it. So that meant I had to make those decisions. And they didn't agree with the decisions. You know, it's one thing to make a decision to let it go, but if your parents are saying, what did you do with this? And what did you do with that? That just adds another layer of guilt. And so I came up with this method. So at the next to the last move for my dad, they were going from their house to a facility because he had broken his second hip. So I got all of the grandkids and their spouses and their kids and the grandkids. And I said, just go through the house and pick what you want. Now, the millennials want nothing, let me tell you. And I hear this a lot from my generation, right? You want nothing, just throw it in the trash. And I go, that's not what I'm asking y'all. You don't have to take it home. We're going to have you gather up everything, your kids, everything, put it on. I'll take pictures. And I said, this is what they chose, which is an apt description. That's what they chose. My mother had lots of dishes. I've inherited that gene too. But there were 6 sets of dishes. And I set them out and I said to the granddaughters, which was the grandsons and their spouses, which set would you choose? And they said, I don't want to, I get that. Just which would you choose? So that comforted my mother. She would say, who took my purple IV dishes? Who took these? And, oh, that's so great. So I would always say it, Jenny chose the purple dishes. Oh, that's right. Because they did. But anytime I would make reference to anything, I would always have to be careful how I framed it, because they did know their big main house before they went to the facility. I said, we're going to have a garage sale, and then they had an auction too. Whatever was left, which was the deal with the auction house, went to a local drug rehab house that had like a Salvation Army thrift store. And I knew that my parents would be all for that, because we'd had a couple of cousins be involved with drugs. And so that satisfied them. But my dad, I told him this story, and I thought that he would find comfort and think it was funny. But he, in the garage, had a whole closet of all of his suits. He was a preacher for 70 years, all of his suits, with the tie, with the shirt, with the pants, with everything. And it was all done. He'd lost so much weight, he couldn't wear these suits anymore. So they had a big magnolia tree out front, and we hung them on that for our garage sale. And this man came, and he was in a truck, and he hit the brakes, and he jumped out, and he was speaking Russian. And I don't know if you know, at that time we were in the Sacramento area, and there was a huge influx of Russian Christians who had been sponsored by a Russian church and brought them over. I mean, hundreds and hundreds. And he put it on, and all of the suits fit him perfectly. He goes, how much for suit? And so we were trying to tell him that my dad was a preacher. He goes, I preacher too. And my niece had decided that she was in charge of the suits. She decided on a ridiculously low amount. And he said, take them all. So I didn't tell my dad how much, because that would have upset him. But I said, Daddy, your suits are still in the pulpit. You know, I tickle. And he kind of thought about it. And then he'd say stuff about, that old Russian stole all my suits.
Oh.
But we had to frame things in ways, in little bits. But in the meantime, we were tossing, you know. I absorbed a lot of, like, I knew my mother had saved wedding presents from their wedding in 1948. And I knew which ones they were because we'd given them a party for their 65th. So I saved those and some of her crystal and things that I knew were great to her, so that when she eventually did come live with us, and I would purposely use those things, she would say, Dina, did you know this is mine? You know, and I go, yeah, Mama. Yeah, you know. So, and that was a comfort to her. And somehow in her brain, I think she thought, well, if Dana has this, I'm sure she's got all this and all this. So I'm just saying, it's how you frame it to your parents.
Yeah.
It's so much more difficult when they're living.
I can only imagine. I mean, as we've gone through some of Mom's stuff, I can't tell you how many times I've gone, Lori Woodall, why on earth do you still have, you know, this? And some of it has been a stress relief, you know, in the midst of so many, like, oh, that has such a memory attached to it. Then there are other things like, why on earth do we have this? But I have to share with you ladies, one thing we came across when we were cleaning out. So we were looking for paperwork on this chair that supposedly came over on the Mayflower. Okay. Now this means we have to go through every piece of paper, right? So we're digging through papers. I come across a manila envelope, and in it are these torn scraps of grocery sack with scrawled writing on it. It's like, what is this? Now, before I tell you what it is, I need to give you this background. So my parents met. My mom came from a wealthy East Coast family. My dad came from a very poor family from Oklahoma. And they met at a dude ranch in Colorado one summer. So Mom and her girlfriend had decided it would be such a lark to go work at a dude ranch. And Daddy and his friend were on their way from Oklahoma to California. Their car had broken down. They were en route to California to offer their services and good looks to the women of California.
Ooh.
Okay.
Ooh.
Yes, my parents were not believers when they met.
Yeah.
This is how my parents meet at this dude ranch. 6 weeks later, they're in love. He wants to take her home to Oklahoma to introduce her to his mother so they can get married. His friend Robert says, take my car. I'll take a bus to California. Robert's dream is still alive. So Daddy and Mom take the car back to Oklahoma. They cross state lines. They call his mother. We're in state. And she says, Bob Richard, what are you driving? And he says, well, that Robert's such a nice guy. He let me have his car. And she said, Bobby, that car's hot. The feds done been here looking for it. So what is soon to be my parents take the back roads of Oklahoma to my papa's chop shop, where the car is disassembled to hide it from the feds. I asked Mom, I'm like, at what point were the red flags flapping in the breeze just pretty? At what point? So Daddy, she finds out once they get married, is an alcoholic. He's getting drunk all the time, constantly picked up for drunk and disorderly. Okay, so fast forward 56 years, and I'm going through my mother's papers, and I find these grocery sacks. And on them, they say, need money and shaving equipment. Bring us a towel. Leave us $5. Don't worry, Mike is right next to me. Bring us clean clothes. Love you, Bobby. Bring us a pint of pure grade alcohol, 10 o'clock tonight. Stand in front and we will lower a rope. Leave the towels on the doorstep. Jailer will be down after a while. These are notes that my father has sailed out of the second story Grady County jailhouse down to my mother waiting below, that she saved for 56 years. 56 years. I don't even know the thought process. I mean, they moved from Oklahoma to Indiana 3 times in Indiana. Every move she kept, like, why would you keep them one move? I mean, can you imagine Lauren like, oh, I'm going to keep these. These are not letters from a Birmingham prison a la MLK from my father to my mother that are kept for 56 years for me to find. So I have them. I don't know if you can see it behind us. I made them into a shadow box with mom and daddy's wedding pictures and then pictures of them later in life and the words, but God, because God finally got a hold of mom first and then dad. And they went on to be faithful servants. And in addition to finding that, I found workbooks, journals, sermon notes, hymn lyrics. I found a letter mom had just scrawled on stationery from a hotel about what it will be like when she goes to heaven and how she was looking forward to it. This had been written decades earlier. So those kind of treasures brought so much joy and comfort, and for me was such a snapshot of what was left for us, that it wasn't just stuff that was left for us to rummage through, but it was this legacy of faith that was left.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So that's my, when I found it, I was in the house with my brother and sister-in-law, and I was in a room by myself, and I hollered out, "Everyone come to me." And so they came in and I read them the letters, and my brother knew right away what they were. And he said, "Are you going to share that at Mom's celebration of life?" I'm like, 100%. I'm going to share that. I'm going to put it in a shadow box, put it up in my house. So
that's something.
Yeah. Can you imagine? I still am not sure why she saved it, or why she saved every funeral flyer from every funeral she had been to. I mean, hundreds of them. Away. I don't know if she ever went back and looked at them. I don't know why, but these are the things she saved. Now, Lauren, I'm interested, being not the daughter, but the daughter-in-law, how did that affect you going through this process?
It was definitely a unique experience, especially when my father-in-law passed away, because he passed away second of the two of them. And so then it was just the kids showing up to kind of go through everything. And with both of them, we knew it was coming. And so we'd had those conversations before. When my mother-in-law passed, we went and we helped my father-in-law for a while and helped him kind of pack up the house when he was ready to move. And there were several pieces that he had said for years. They had said, "Oh, we want Matthew to have these, or we want Susan to have those." But then there were surprises too. And one of the biggest surprises for me was my mother-in-law had just insisted that I have the dishes that she had, not china, but the big chunky pottery type dishes that she had from early in their marriage that he had bought for her. And I still have the receipt in one of the teacups. He had bought her this set. And I tell you what, they are ugly as sin.
Oh,
They are not anything I would ever. My least favorite color is green. And these dishes are just green all the way through. And they're very 1970s. And you're just not my style at all. But every single time I pull out one of those dishes, I think about my mother-in-law. And I think about how she was just adamant. She struggled with dementia by the time she left us, but she was adamant to the very end that Lauren needs these dishes. And it was touching because she said Lauren needs these dishes because she's a preacher's wife. And she's going to entertain a lot.
Good.
And so she needs lots of dishes. So she needs these dishes from me. She had a punch bowl set that she had received as a wedding gift back in the late 50s, maybe early 60s. And that also went to me because, well, Lauren's a preacher's wife. She's going to be hosting bridal showers and baby showers, and and so it was interesting to see the way that they pulled me in and included me. But it was also interesting to see the meaningfulness in the things that were left behind. Even the things that we threw away. By the time my father-in-law passed, he was very ill. And as part of his medical care, he would track his blood pressure, his oxygen levels, multiple times a day. Probably he tracked them more than he actually needed to, but whatever. And when he passed, we went and cleaned out his house and found just notebooks, page after page after page, where he had meticulously tracked all of that data. And we didn't keep those notebooks because it's useless. But as we went through that, we all stopped and said, this is such a dad thing to do. Like this is such a him thing to do, because the things that were left behind communicated to us what meaning was found throughout their lives, but especially at the end of their lives. That was his day, was watching the clock, because in 2 hours I need to track this information again. And so things like that, while we didn't keep them forever for sure, but it's a good remembrance and a good talking point to be able to say, hey, these were things I like the grocery sack strips. These are things that communicate what was important to them at a particular point in their life. And that's worth remembering. That's worth paying attention to. It tells you who they are.
I found going through Mom's things that I remember when she purchased some of those items. And she purchased them because she had room for them. She liked them. I don't ever remember Mom purchasing something and saying to me, it's very important to me that this be passed on for generations. And I've kept that in mind. When I buy things for myself, I buy for what fits my home at that time. Mm-hmm. So the idea of holding on to something that was somebody else's just because it was theirs, if it's not fitting in my home, if it's not blessing us, I've erred on, I think ultimately they want me to feel blessed, not to feel burdened by these things. And even going through some of Mom's things has made me mindful about what I save that my children will have to go through one day. So there were several things that Mom kept of her mother's that didn't mean a lot to me and meant absolutely nothing to my children who had never met her. So I think there is some spiritual lessons in going through a clean out of what you hold onto and why. Have you ladies found that to be true? Colleen, have you found that to be true as you were going through what spiritual lessons came up?
Yes, a couple of people have brought this. They've touched on this a little bit. I think it's really important. Look through their Bible study books, because sometimes these books that they have are out of print. And so you want to make sure that those don't get just tossed out or something. I brought a couple that I got from my mom. This one is called Why I Am a Member of the Church of Christ.
Wow.
By Leroy Brownlow. And I remember I've read a little bit of this. It's kind of interesting. And then, there's a little thing in here. Bible Answers. What is heresy and how may I recognize a false teacher? So these are little things that my mom had. So I have that. And then I have another one. I think this one's called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by Norman Geisler and Frank Turek. So those are neat to look at. And old Bibles you can see what they highlighted or little notes they have in there. So that's always rewarding. With the things like letters, one thing that I realized, I was never a genealogy person, not really. But sometimes when you do go through this exercise, it turns you into one, and then you're curious, and you've got these things you're looking up. And one thing I found in looking at genealogy in my ancestors is that you can usually find birth, marriage, death. So civil records are there. But it was rare to find anything written by these people. You might have a photograph when you went back as far as my great-grandparents. So maybe people who died before 1950, that it's hard to find letters they wrote or articles they might have written. So if you've got anything like that, even if it seems like well, why would I want this? It's just a short letter, it doesn't say much. You still probably need to keep it because it may be the only original thing that they wrote. So that's another tip.
Dana, did you find any spiritual lessons going through the process of, what was it, a total of 9 moves?
Yeah. Yes. Dust to dust, all is vanity. And it helped me when we moved from California to Tennessee as we were purging. That was on top of everything else. What really matters to me, I just went and grabbed this. This, I don't know if you can see, this is a picture that was given to my parents in 1948 from the jewelry store. There was a receipt I couldn't find. And my mother used it all the time. And so I use it. If you come to my house, I always have 3 pictures out. This one has water, sweet tea, iced tea, and sometimes lemonade. Because I want to carry on this tradition of using. If we're going to keep things, we're going to use them. That's my motto. And people will say, oh, that's too nice. No. It's too nice for what? To collect dust? No, we need to use them because I hope that I'm patterning something and imprinting either in my grandchildren or special friends. That I have a lot of really special friends here who were very good to my mother. And thinking one day maybe they would like that because I don't want mother's legacy to end in a storage unit. We're going to bring it out. We're going to be a part of that. And they're beautiful things. I mean, mother had wonderful taste and her friends gave her wonderful things too. So I just say that to that. But yes, it does put in perspective a lot. But if I could, I want to circle back to what Lauren was talking about, her experience as a daughter-in-law, because I experienced that. And it got to be really crucial because I spoke on a previous thing, how my mother-in-law was a high-functioning dementia person. And she was a nurse, very, very smart. And we knew she was dying and we knew something was wrong, but she hid from us everything. And there would be, my wash rags would just disappear when she would come and visit. And she was packing a melanoma the size of a softball on her arm. And so when one of the moves was, she was in a duplex and the owner of the duplex called us and said, there's horrendous odor coming from her apartment. If you don't get rid of it, she's on the streets. So we drove 3 hours and my sister-in-law was there and she found all of these bloody clothes everywhere and she started washing them. And I went, why are you washing them? She goes, so then we can give them away. And I went, no, we're putting it out in the dumpster right now. And she and her mother had a very tenuous relationship at best. So I pulled out and I went, okay, I'm going to be the bad guy here. It's always the daughter-in-law, right? And I'll take it for everybody so that my husband wouldn't get blamed, none of the kids, none of the grandkids. And I said, and if Phyllis asks, you say, Dana made us do this. And because we had to, otherwise she was going to lose her duplex. So there are some decisions you make as a daughter-in-law because no one else in the room is doing anything and you want to protect them. I wanted to protect my sister-in-law, who was very sweet, and my husband. And so you do that. And I would just say, if you go into situations as the in-law, be prepared. Be prepared to do that.
That's great counsel. One of the things I found going through mom's things was just emotions that would come up. Like sometimes I would come across a picture and I would feel a sense of like, oh, who is this? And then panic. I don't know who that is. And there's nobody to ask. That information's dead now. I'll never know it. And for me, that quickly led to, what else? Well, I never know. What else can I never ask? That emotion would come up pretty quickly. Frustration would come up. You know, why do we have this? Why are we going through all this? Why didn't you even deal with it? Some came up like that. Gratitude came up. It just felt like it was swirling emotion. And during periods of grief, I think you just have so little margin for any extra that, all right, Lauren, you're nodding. What can you say to this?
Well, so as I'm listening to all of y'all talk, it's occurring to me that while I have not cleaned out my parents' house, I have cleaned out my husband's house. And that in a lot of ways was very similar. When Matt got ill and we moved to Texas, we moved into a house with my parents. And they graciously purchased a house that would suit the needs of them and us simultaneously. But we were combining households. And my mom, being, you know, a couple of years older than me, not much older, of course, but just a little bit older than me, she had nicer stuff than I had. I mean, I was youngish at the time and on a preacher's wife's budget. And so we didn't need 2 households worth of kitchen stuff. We didn't need 2 households worth of living room furniture. And so we gave a lot of our stuff away. There was a young woman where we worshiped in Tennessee who was starting over with 3 young children, and her husband had walked away, and she was trying to make a life for herself and her kids. And Matt said, why don't we just give all this stuff rather than paying to move it to Texas and then figuring out what to do with it when we get there? Why don't we just make this stuff useful? And one of the lessons that taught me was not to be materialistic. Not in the sense that we typically use that term, though, right? Typically, we talk about that kind of as analogous to greed. But there's also a sense of the word that is a conviction that the material world is all there is. And my love language is gifts. I'm a very visual person. I have Bible all over my wall. Y'all, I have my husband's handwriting on my arm because I'm a visual person and I need those physical, tangible reminders of what's important. But the physical reminder of it is not the reality of what is. And I think that was the biggest lesson for me in cleaning out Matt's parents' houses, but especially in condensing our lives when Matt passed. I have some things, mostly things to give the kids when they're a little older. I have the Bible that Matt preached from for years. I have Matt's glasses, not that the kids are going to wear them, right, but as a reminder to see the world the way your dad saw the world. The kids wear some of his clothes now. And mostly they wear the things that they bought for him because they were kids and bought what was interesting to them. But Matt is not in the physical Bible that I have. He's not in the glasses. He's not in the clothes. And it's good to keep those reminders as long as they stay reminders. I have known people who are terrified to get rid of the things that belonged to their loved one because of that fear and that, oh no, but what are they going to think? That is not them. That physical reminder is not them anymore. And so I very carefully curate what I keep around and what I get rid of, because it's a good reminder for me that the stuff is not what's important. The reminders that I get from seeing the things are important. And the stuff itself, my family teases, I'll use that word. They tease me because we had Matt cremated, and the daughter that we lost 17 years ago, my daughter Macy, we also had her cremated. And part of that was because we're a preacher family. If I bury her here, who knows where we're going to end up? And I want to keep her with me. And my family said, Lauren, you know that's not really her anymore, right? like that. She's not in that little jar, right? And the same with Matt. My family will say, he's not actually in that little jar on your desk. But seeing those jars on my desk reminds me, and now I'm going to start crying, reminds me of what's important. I have places to be and people to see.
Right.
And that's the important piece. And so I keep the things in front of me that remind me of that. And to me, that's the spiritual lesson in all of it, right? Is that, like David said, when his child with Bathsheba passed away at birth, he will not come to me, but I will go to him.
Right.
And that when we're dealing with tangible reminders of the people that have gone, those reminders have to serve to point us back to where we're supposed to be headed to begin with. That those reminders serve as an arrow saying, go to them, go to where they are and keep the faith, finish the course so that you can see them again when it's time. And as much as a physical reminder does that, it's good to keep around and it's good to use. And if it doesn't do that, if it ties us here instead, then it's not being useful anymore and it's hindering us. And we should think about getting rid of it, at least. I say, as I still have boxes in the other room that I haven't dealt with yet.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. Absolutely.
Well, and really, you're talking there about where do we store up our treasure and what is our heart bound up in? You know, I really like that idea of using these items as a tool to point us to where our loved one would want to point us to, versus a tie down that keeps us only connected to this earth. And that's not honoring. A preacher told my dad decades ago, Daddy was having a hard time coming to the faith because he thought if he obeyed the gospel, it would be a condemnation of his mother. And the preacher said to him, first of all, I don't know your mother. I don't know where your mother is, but I know this about a mother's love. It reaches beyond the grave. Mm-hmm. And you're not honoring your mother by not doing what you know is right. And so this idea of whether it's, Lazarus and the rich man who was concerned about his relatives back on earth, wherever they are, they want the best for us. And if we're keeping things that help point us heavenward, then that's great. But we don't need, 5,000 knickknacks to do that. We can have a few. We don't need every stick of furniture. We need, maybe a few. So for me, it's really gone back to, is this useful and is this beautiful? And part of being beautiful and useful is it helping me in my walk with the Lord? And does it remind me of his beauty? So one of the other questions they gave us that I thought was a great question is, how does the work of cleaning out their house honor your parents and demonstrate your love for them? And I just thought, and maybe this can be the start of our wrap up, that when we do for others what they cannot do for themselves, what is that but Jesus' love in action? Jesus, who did everything for us that we could not do for ourselves, save ourselves, he does. And for us to be able to come in And, Colleen, whether it's settle our loved ones' affairs, or Dana, it's cleaning out their items, or Lauren, it's caring for the children they leave behind, whatever it is, part of what we're doing is that final Jesus work of doing for them what they can't do anymore. And I just think that's such a beautiful way to look at what can be just seem like a mountain of work and grief and feeling in front of us. So let's do a round robin as we're ending. Colleen, what's another piece of advice you'd like to give someone if they find themselves having to help a parent move or clean out a parent's house?
Well, I think that count yourself very fortunate if it goes very smoothly. If the parents have their affairs buttoned up, nice tight will, and you don't have to worry about the live-in girlfriend and wants the house and all kinds of stuff that can happen. Or I'm sure you've read things where people say you just never know what somebody's like until there's money to be inherited. And some people, if they just, I don't know, they're worried about it. They think they're not going to get all the money they're supposed to get. Or some just, they don't even participate. It's like there's this house and buildings and things to liquidate. They just don't get involved and don't help. So count yourself fortunate if you had a smooth situation. And I would say my parents and my husband's parents' legacy is that their grown children, the children left and grandchildren left behind, they all pitched in and were amenable to getting the work done in an equitable way without jealousy or greed. And they showed a great work ethic too, and were happy to help whoever the executor was. So I pray a prayer of thanks if you've had that situation, and do your best to make it smooth if the day comes that you have to be a part of that team.
Great. How about you, Dana? What's another piece of advice you give people in this situation?
Well, I've known people, not members of the church, where their loved ones have died several states away, and they've just called services to come deal with everything and just send them the check. And I've always thought how cold and unfeeling and how ungrateful as a child to do that, to not take that last step. So we decided that the children and the grandchildren would, of course, come through the house and decide what they wanted, which was nothing. And then we too, like Lauren and Matt did, there were several couples getting married and come, take, there's furniture. And it just was really a blessing to them. It was, when you're first married and you're struggling, you don't have a table and chairs for the kitchen. You don't have, any of those luxuries. And Mother and Dad had some very nice pieces of furniture that were stable, and TVs, things like that cost money. They weren't state of the art or anything, but we were so happy. And when they would thank me, and I go, no, Mom and Dad would be so excited to know that you were using this or this was. So I think that we have to take joy anywhere we can. And Heather, I feel for you. You're newly going through it. I'm coming up on a year now of losing my mother at the end of this month, and it still hurts. But as long as we are true to God and respect and honor our parents, it's a hard journey. But guess what? So is childbirth. And as Mother lay dying with the hospice workers, they said, "Do you know what a doula is?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I know what a doula is." And they said, "We're going to help you through this." And it was wonderful and respectful. And I'm just saying, anybody who's going through this, let your brothers and sisters know you need help. Don't try and do it alone, because they want to help you.
Amen. How about you, Lauren? Any parting advice for ladies?
I think the biggest advice that I have is people first. If you have a choice between valuing stuff and valuing people, always choose the people. A dear friend of mine lost her husband a few weeks ago and was worrying as he was in the process of headed for hospice, trying to sort through their physical belongings so that they could move and be closer to family, and trying to figure out how to sell everything and pack everything. And I said, honey, spend the time with your husband.
Yeah.
That's a limited time offer. Even if he has another 2 years with us, that's still a limited time offer. The stuff will wait. If you have a choice between fighting with a family member over who gets what, or over whether they need to help, always choose the relationship before the things. It's just stuff. There's stuff that I have bought and replaced a dozen times in my life because I had it, somebody else needed it, I gave it to them, and then I bought another one. Stuff is replaceable.
Yeah.
Always value the people first.
So mine's going to go along with the last two comments in particular. And that is, especially if you're dealing with parents, tends to be the natural order of life for children to bury their parents. That tends to be the natural order. And so that's not a shock. This time will come. And the preparing for that, part of that, I think, is pouring into your sisters in Christ so that you have those relationships when you know you're going to need them. It was so helpful for me to have someone say, do you think you're going to bake 12 pies along with your 196 muffins? How many pie tins do you think you'll need? I'm like, I don't know. How many pie tins do I mean, I was just, you're comment about 300,000 decisions. Like, you just, after a while, I can't think. But to know that there are people that I can say, can you just clean out this closet and throw away anything that's expired? Can you just go through these cabinets and throw away any food that's expired, and I'll make a decision on the rest? Those relationships really have carried me through this time, whether it's those physical things or women just showing up with food out of the blue or a text, but those relationships were built during a time of peace. And so I think it's really, we're not ignorant of Satan's schemes, and he wants us to feel alone and overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. If you know this time is going to come, there's some good ways to prepare for that without being morbid. I mean, not that I intentionally say I'm going to pour into this woman because one day I'll need her to hold my hand while my mother is passing, but that's the truth of it. That's when you build those relationships, is in time of peace. And they're really important and meant to be a blessing. I mean, is it any wonder that our triune God, who exists in relationship, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, wants us to have community? So that is my final parting. All right, ladies. Well, thank you so much. This has been super helpful discussion. We could have talked all night long, I'm sure, but I'm sure people can put questions in the comments when this airs, and maybe we can answer some more questions that way. So thanks, ladies. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.